Hey, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. Andy here from Drive Steady, and in this video I'm reviewing the Mercedes AMG GLE63S Coupe. So listen up, V8 AMGs are becoming really hard to find. Mercedes dealerships across the country are basically marking them all up, and Mercedes themselves have pretty much removed all V8 63 models from their website, which is quite astonishing if you think about it. But moving along from the scarcity topic, I recently had a chance to drive the Porsche Cayenne Coupe, and I was pleasantly surprised by how good of a car it was. So that got me thinking what AMG's Coupe SUV had to offer. So let's find out in this review of the Mercedes AMG GLE63S Coupe.
Julep, julep, julep,
Alright, so let's start the review off by giving a big thank you to Keys Mercedes for allowing me to review this AMG GLE63S Coupe today. If you happen to be interested in this car or any other new or certified pre-owned Mercedes, make sure you give them a call. I've left their information in the description below. Now, let's move to the exterior design of the GLE63S Coupe. And I gotta admit, I'm not a big fan of the whole four-door coupe SUV theme or design. Call me a traditionalist, but I actually like the regular boxy GLE SUV design better than the coupe variant. Now, a couple of things I do like about the GLE Coupe are the flared fender extensions that cover up these really cool looking AMG wheels. And also, when Mercedes gave the GLE a refresh, they changed the taillights, and I like these as well. They're a very aggressive looking taillight with the 3D element of the LED lights. But if I had to pick my favorite coupe SUV design, it would have to be the Porsche Cayenne. All right, so now let's switch gears and talk about what makes this an AMG model, and that is the engine. So this is a 4-liter twin turbocharged 8-cylinder mild hybrid setup motor that produces 603 horsepower and 627 pounds-feet of torque. It's mated to a 9-speed traditional torque converter automatic transmission, and it's putting power down to all 4 wheels using Mercedes's 4MATIC all-wheel drive system. Now, I mentioned mild hybrid, and what this translates to is this motor is assisted by a 48-volt mild hybrid setup, and it contributes an additional 21 horsepower and 184 pounds-feet of torque in short bursts. Now, what does all of this translate to, considering that this car weighs basically 5,400 pounds, a 0 to 60 time of 3.7 seconds, which is literally insane. If you think about car standards or acceleration standards from about 10 years ago, anything under 4 seconds was considered supercar territory, and this is a 5,400 pound SUV getting to that mark. Now, some of the other engine characteristics, this is of course the Hot V setup, which means the turbochargers are mounted in between the cylinder banks. And another engine characteristic is that it has cylinder deactivation, which means that it can shut off half of the engine and run on 4 cylinders. Now, for a car that's this big and has this much horsepower and costs this much, some people might say, why? Well, it's because of efficiency standards, and certain regulations and certain criteria need to be met even on these high-performance AMG models. But efficiency talk aside, this car has a standard AMG performance exhaust. So I'm going to take you around back and let you listen to what it sounds like. All right, so what did you think of that V8 AMG Rumble? Make sure you leave me a comment down below with your thoughts. Now let's switch gears and talk about the wheels, tires, brakes, and suspension, starting off with the suspension. And this comes with a AMG Ride Control Plus air suspension with adaptive dampers. And what that means is the car has the ability to raise and lower itself and make the dampers firmer or softer based off of the driving conditions. And as a driver, you also have the ability to adjust these on your own. So there are toggle switches on the interior that allow you to raise and lower the car, and you can change the firmness or the softness of the suspension through the infotainment system and using the toggle switches on the center console. Now this car also has active roll bar stabilization, and it's really important for a car of this size and this weight because it helps reduce that roll that you get in turns with a car of this size. Now finally, it also has a electronic locking rear differential. So let's switch gears and talk about the wheels. So these wheels are optional. They're 22 inches on all four corners. The standard GLE63S Coupe comes with 21-inch wheels. So these are painted in silver and very traditional looking. You find these on all of the 63 AMG models. They're by 10 up front and 11.5 in the rear, so almost a 12-inch wheel in the back. The tires wrapping them on this specific model are Continentals, 285 up front and 325 in the rear. Now let's jump inside the wheelbarrow, and because this is a big heavy car, it has big brakes. So 15.7-inch rotors up front being bitten onto by a red painted AMG lettered 6-piston caliper, and in the rear 14.7-inch brake with a single floating red caliper back there as well. Now you can get carbon ceramics in the GLE, and those can be distinguished by the bronze painted calipers, and that'll save you a couple pounds on all four corners. So with all that out of the way, now let's switch gears and talk about some practicality. As I take you around to the back, let's talk about the trunk. All right, so because people are going to buy this thing and drive it on a daily basis, let's talk about some of the practicality features in this AMG GLE model, starting off with the trunk. So there are multiple ways of opening the trunk. There's a button on the interior, there's a button on the key, there's comfort access right here by pushing the Mercedes logo, and then there's also a kick motion. So long as you have the key, you can push this Mercedes logo and it will electronically open the trunk for you. You're greeted with a really nice amount of space. So you've got 27 cubic feet of space with the rear seats folded up. Now if you fold the rear seats down, that gives you 63 cubic feet of space in this GLE Coupe. Now one thing to remember, if you're going for the Coupe variant, you are going to lose some cubic feet. I believe it's 10 cubic feet of space with the seats folded up or with the seats folded down compared to the traditional SUV GLE model. But nonetheless, I don't envision any issues in this Coupe variant. Even with the seats folded up, I could easily see somebody stacking multiple luggage pieces in here, 2 larger pieces of luggage, more than enough to get away with your family on a weekend getaway or with a couple. All right, now 2 characteristics about the trunk. First thing being an inconveniency, and I also saw this in the Cayenne Coupe, and they're related to folding the rear seats. Now, if I want to fold down the rear seats, I have to go around to the side. I can't do it from back here because they're kind of too far away. Unless you're a taller individual, you might be able to reach them from back here. But I find it to be inconvenient to have to go all the way to the side, fold it down, do all these things. When I saw it in the GLS, now the GLS has 3 rows, but all 3 rows are controlled via buttons. So give me a button here, let me fold down the rear seats electronically so I don't have to go around to the side and stop what I'm doing here as far as loading stuff into the back of my GLE SUV. Now a conveniency, so if you've got something heavy and you can't really lift it up all the way, or this thing is a little bit too high for you, there is a button right here that allows you to lower the car down, or at least the rear of the car, to its lowest suspension setting, and this is all possible because the GLE has a air suspension. So this gives you ultimate convenience. If you've got something really heavy, you don't have to lift it up as high, so dropping it down a couple inches will just help you that much more in loading things into the back of your GLE. Now let me take you to the interior and show you what it's like in there. All right, so now the interior of the GLE, and this is very similar, if not identical, to what you see in most other Mercedes SUVs. You've got this large gauge cluster in front of you, and the center section here has got a bunch of center controls, and overall it's a really nice, high quality place to be. The materials, the fit and the finish, I've got wood here on the dash. The soft touch material on the dash looks really good. I've got contrasting silver stitching all over the interior to give it a nice balance. The ambient lighting from Mercedes is always very cool as well. But one of the things I noticed when I sat in this GLE is that it's the right size. It doesn't feel really big as an SUV, and it almost kind of shrinks around you. Not that you're not going to get that big SUV feeling. It is a larger feeling car with a nice amount of headroom up here, but it's a good size. It doesn't feel overly bloated, if that makes any sense. And now let me switch and give you some more details on a couple items on the interior. Starting off with the seat. This is surprisingly one of the most comfortable seats I've sat in an SUV in a really long time. I don't know if it's because it's properly broken in. It has 13,500 miles, but it's an immensely comfortable seat. The cushioning is very, very nice, and the leather is of a nice material, and the aggressiveness, it does have adjustable side bolsters, and they hold you in pretty nicely. Now, one of the things I am going to complain about these side bolsters is there is no physical button to expand and contract them. I have to go into the infotainment system, and this I don't like. Just give me another button right here, right next to all the other physical controls that allow me to adjust the seat. And then out in front of you, you've got a dual screen setup that acts as your gauge cluster and your infotainment system. Both very clear, very easy to read. The infotainment system I like a lot. I've been very vocal about this. I like MBUX a lot. I also like BMW's iDrive system as well. And MBUX I like a lot because it's very easy to use. There are a lot of shortcuts. It's very simple and easy to just jump into, and here I'm just going to use my infotainment system. At least it was for me. And the last point to touch on up here before I move to the back is storage. The center compartment does have a decent amount of storage room, more than enough to put like your sunglass holder or any other knickknacks that you have. The door pockets are absolutely humongous. You can fit a really large bottle of water. So that's basically the front portion of the GLE. Now let's move to the back seats and I'll show you what it's like over there. All right, so now the back seats of the GLE, and let's jump into the comfort levels and the overall space back here. So as far as comfort, I am sitting in a nicely cushioned seat. My arm rests in a nice position. The backrest, even though it's fixed, it's slightly angled back, so I do feel like I'm lounging back here. So it's a really nice, comfortable seating position to be in. As far as space goes, my legroom is great. I'm 5'10", 5'11", for reference. I'm sitting very comfortably behind myself. You can see I have a lot of leg room, and as far as headroom, I have plenty of headroom. I could see somebody maybe 2 or 3 inches taller than I am fitting in here just fine. Now, beyond that, some of the conveniences, this does have a 4-zone climate control system. I have the ability to control each zone, each quadrant of the car back here using this LCD display with these really nice metal looking buttons. And separately, I also have charging capabilities. Now, charging capabilities in the back seat is something I always pay attention to, considering how everybody is connected now with smartphones and tablets and laptops and the such. So you've got 3 USB Type-C outlets and 1 traditional 115 volt outlet. So this is if you have your charging head for your phone, or if you've got a laptop that you need to charge back here. So you can certainly do that. You've got options, but overall, it's a really nice place to be back here. Overall, on the interior, it's a nice place to be. Some of the things I would approve, I wish this did have a panoramic roof, but I think there's a limitation here structurally with the way the roof is on the GLE Coupe specifically. Now, the thing I wanted to highlight is the size. It really is a great size for an SUV. For the front and for the rear, I've got plenty of legroom here. The front feels driver focused. As much as this is a big SUV, it still feels like it wraps around you, and is one of the things I really, really liked about the interior characteristics of this car. So with the interior out of the way, now let's go to the driving portion of the review and see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. All right, so now the driving portion of the GLE63 review, and as always, this is what the key looks like. I actually like these new AMG keys a lot because they're all metal. If any plastic, I think the buttons are plastic, but they blend in very nicely with the rest of the metal key. The rest of the visibility, so visibility wise, I've got great visibility out front. I sit up really high, so I got that really nice command position that if you're looking for in an SUV, this also has it as well. I've got blind spot monitoring, I've got 360 cameras, I can see out the back just fine. The camera system in the GLE is very, very good. Multiple angles to show you the sidewalk, 360, top view, the whole thing, so no concerns about visibility there. So let's go ahead and turn this thing on and see what it drives like. And the start stop button is right here on the right hand side. Foot on the brake. And considering that this is a V8, I don't really get a bunch of bark when this thing turns on. So I wish the exhaust noise was a little louder at startup in here. Now, let's go ahead. Mercedes got the stock here as opposed to a shifter down here on the center console. The heads-up display is actually very good in this Mercedes or in this GLE as well. So let's go for a ride. Now, starting off in comfort mode, this thing is very, very comfortable. It's very lofty. Like I said in the interior portion of the review, the seat is immensely comfortable and really soaks up everything. And right now I'm running in 4-cylinder mode, so cylinder deactivation was enabled, and it really just coasts along. But I'm going to put that aside for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in Sport Plus mode. Exhaust enabled, suspension in its hardest setting, suspension in its lowest setting, and let's see what this thing's got. Yes, it's got plenty of get up. The transmission it bangs off the shift very quickly, but it's not as smooth as the DCT that Mercedes gives you in some of the other performance cars. I noticed that this transmission seems a little bit clunkier, the 9-speed, compared to the DCTs and even the 8-speed automatic transmission that I've driven in other Mercedes cars. But from a speed standpoint, there's no question this is a really, really fast SUV, and I underline and bold that SUV part because it still feels like an SUV. Even though it's very fast, 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds, it still feels somewhat big. The weight of the car and the acceleration and the performance don't feel sports car like. But the speed overall is good. Is it faster than the Cayenne Turbo S? When it's in the high rev range, it really starts pulling. You feel that extra grunt in the upper RPM range. But my question earlier, is it as fast as the Cayenne Turbo S e-hybrid that I drove? No, it's not. It is faster when the Cayenne Turbo S is running just on the gas power. But when that thing has both drivetrains, the hybrid and the ICE, the internal combustion engine running, and it's got the 617 horsepower, man, that thing screams. Now, one other thing about screaming, I noticed that on the interior of this car, the exhaust sounds a lot tamer than it does for the people listening outside. It's not as loud in here as I want it to be. You definitely get the rumble and the grunt of the V8, but it seems somewhat synthetic, and I wish there was more noise in here. It seems very, very quiet. Now, to some people that may be a good thing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition back into comfort mode and talk to you a little bit more about comfort mode. So in comfort mode, it's really soft and very tame. So I could see this having a really nice transition between I'm feeling like I really want to mash the gas and drive a little sporty, and then transition immediately into comfort mode and just be able to drive it on a daily basis without having any concerns or any type of fatigue issues or stiffness or anything like that, or basically uncomfort in the seat. Now, some of the other things as far as the feel. Now, the steering is actually surprisingly direct. Like anything I do with the steering in all modes, comfort, sport, sport plus, race, it's immensely responsive and very, very direct. But the downside is it has very little feel. There's nothing coming through the steering wheel. It just feels numb. But otherwise, it's a very direct suspension, steering feel. As far as the suspension, and that kind of ties in with the comfort mode. In comfort mode, sport mode, or in sport plus mode, the suspension in the softest or the firmest setting, this is a very comfortable riding car. I don't foresee any issues with driving this on a daily basis. Now, overall, what do I think of this car? I think this is a really, really good car. Some of the shortcomings, the transmission for me feels a little clunky, especially at lower speeds and when you're maneuvering around. Reverse drive seems a little clunky. The DCTs feel a little smoother to me. The other thing, as far as convenience you go, the rear seats, stretching to lower the rear seats are somewhat of a challenge, and I got to go around to the side. Now, this is really nitpicking, but I really would have liked if it had the electronic folding seats like the GLS does, and a little bit more exhaust noise wouldn't hurt either, considering that this is an AMG car. But overall, if you're into the styling, this is actually a really, really nice SUV that gives you the dual purpose of an AMG, the grunt, the V8, the uniqueness of that V8. If you're into this styling, this is a great, great SUV with a lot of things that are packed into it. As far as its convenience you go, you've got a great trunk. The size is nice on the interior, rear folding seats for expanded cargo space. And overall, even in the back seats, I've got a surprising amount of space, even considering that this has a sloped roof compared to the SUV boxy style GLE. So that's pretty much it. If you've got any other questions, make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram at DriveSteady. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.